guys, I'm Riley.
And I'm Kirsten.
Today we're talking about the son of Robert Andrew Bredella and Mary Louise Bredella.
Robert Bredella Jr. was a well-known serial killer in the 80s who tortured and killed 6 men. He was born January 31st, 1949, and his childhood was rough.
His mom was a housewife and his dad worked for the
Motor company. At 7, he had a brother, Daniel, and it was a funky-looking baby.
Family were Catholics, and Robert and Daniel would regularly attend religious education courses.
At school, Robert was bullied because he had a bad speech impediment and he wore thick glasses.
Jeffrey Dahmer do. His teachers did say that it was a bit hard to teach him and that he was smart and a loner.
Good personality trait, bestie. His father favored his brother Daniel because he played sports. Gross.
Their father would physically and mentally abuse them and beat them with the leather strap.
When Robert was 16, his father suddenly died of a heart attack and his mother remarried soon after.
That's
embarrassing.
When he was 16, he was sexually assaulted by a man he worked with in an Ohio restaurant.
18, I forgot. At 18, he enrolled in the Kansas City Art Institution, Picasso. This is also the same time that he began abusing and selling drugs.
At 19, he was arrested for selling amphetamines to an
undercover cop.
Which got him a 5-year suspended sentence.
Actually, he was arrested twice. The second time was for possession of LSD and marijuana, but he only spent 5 days in jail because them cops didn't have no evidence.
At 20, he was pressured to drop out of art school, but here's where things get weird.
He was pressured to drop out of art school because he killed a duck, a chicken, and a dog while he was in art school. After he dropped out of art school, he became a chef, and between his 20s and 30s, he became more of like an accomplished chef, and he joined chefs associations. He also helped organize local neighborhood watch associations.
He became more open about his homosexuality.
He rented a space at his local flea market and sold antiques and artifacts.
At 32, he quit being a chef and worked full-time at his shop, which he named Bob's Bizarre Bazaar.
That's bizarre. At 33, he had a brief relationship with an unstable Vietnam veteran.
He also picked up and made friends with male prostitutes.
Because he couldn't get no other friends. He would allow the prostitutes to live with them if they did housework, and he tried to get many of them to stop prostituting.
Bredella had 7 victims, but only one of them escaped.
Before his killings, he tested drugs in stray dogs.
The killings and tortures happened in a span of 4 years, while Bredella was between the years of 35 and 39.
I think that Bredella was kind of a control freak. He would hang out with prostitutes, and prostitutes are people in need, Those are people that he knows are going to talk to them. And also, they were younger. Younger people tend to be more vulnerable.
So basically, he told them that they could stay with him as long as they did whatever he said and when he said it, because he knew they would do it because they were so desperate.
In July of 1984, one of the young prostitutes that Robert would hang out with, his name was Jerry Hallwell, Robert ended up drugging him with animal tranquilizer. He bounded him, gagged him, and repeatedly sodomized him.
Jerry unfortunately ended up dying of asphyxiation soon after. During this time, he kept a full, detailed torture diary, basically, with pictures and notes and every step that he did in the process.
He had the torture diary for all of his victims, and he also took selfies with them. He would take Polaroid pictures with his victims after they were dead.
After Jerry died, Robert drained his blood and dismembered his body, and then put his body pieces in trash bags and left them on the side of the road like it was legit garbage.
Jerry's body was actually never found. Nobody had any clue where he went. Nobody had any idea. He just disappeared. They only knew that this had happened and what happened to him because of all of the pictures that he took in the torture diary.
And then there was his second kill in April of 1985. This victim's name was Robert Sheldon. He was an acquaintance of Bredella's, which Bredella drugged and then had taken him to the doctor because Sheldon complained of soreness from the drugs.
So the day after Bredella had taken Sheldon to the doctor, Sheldon ended up getting drunk. So Bredella drugged him again with sedatives and tranquilizers, but this time he bounded him and gagged him and tortured him. Bredella had Sheldon for longer than his first victim, though. He had him for a couple days, and the first victim was only like a day.
So it almost seems like he's like indecisive, like he doesn't know if he wants to go through with it or if he doesn't.
Because why would you drug him and then take him to the doctors to get help from the drugs you gave him to drug him and kill him? That doesn't make sense.
Just start from the beginning,
And it was only a day apart.
Yeah. Bredella suffocated Sheldon so that the workman he had hired to do some roof work wouldn't hear him.
Sheldon's blood was drained in a bathtub and he was dismembered, but this time Bredella kept Sheldon's head and he buried it in his backyard.
And then there's also his third kill, which was June in 1985. This victim's name was Mark Wallace. Mark Wallace had met Robert when he had helped with some yard work that Mark did for Robert.
Robert ended up finding Mark using his tool shed as shelter, so he invited him to come in his house, and he was drugged and tortured and sodomized, again, just like the other ones. But he was only there for a couple hours, and then he died of asphyxiation.
And then Bredella disposed of his body just like he had done to the ones before.
In September of 1985, Robert picked up his fourth victim. His name was James Ferris. He found him at a gay bar, and he invited him to come back to his house.
And then basically the cycle continued because Robert just killed, tortured, and disposed of Ferris as he had done to all of his other victims before.
In June of 1986, Robert met a male prostitute that he knew from a couple years ago. His name was Todd Stoops, and that was his fifth victim. He invited him to come home with him, per usual.
Robert then drugged and tortured him for weeks. So basically, he's keeping him for longer, and he's getting more confident that he's not gonna get caught.
And he
hasn't so far.
He's experimenting with them. He's seeing how much they can take before they die.
Yeah, he's seeing where the breaking point is.
So Stoops ended up dying from blood loss as a result of all the torture, and Bredella disposed of his body the same way as the rest.
In June of 1987, Robert bailed his friend Larry Pearson out of jail and invited him to live with him, just like the others. And he happened to be Robert's sixth victim.
Bredella kept Pearson in his basement for 6 weeks and tortured him for 6 weeks.
Bredella went to the hospital after Pearson had bit his penis. Bredella was told he had to stay at the hospital for a couple of days. Before his stay, he went home and suffocated Pearson with a plastic bag.
After Bredella got out of the hospital, he went and disposed of Pearson's body. But he kept his head and buried it in his backyard again.
He also dug up Sheldon's skull to put it on display in his house.
I feel like he's trying to display it as like a prized possession. That's weird, you know?
Yeah, but why that one?
In March of 1988, Bredella picked up Chris Bryson. He was a male prostitute, and he drugged him and tortured him for 5 days. This is Bredella's last victim, but he's the only survivor out of all of them.
While Bredella was at work, Bryson freed himself by burning through the ropes that bounded him and jumping out of the second-story window.
Bryson ran to the neighbor's house in nothing but a dog collar, and he managed to tell the police what had happened to him.
I guess Bryson managed to get through to the police because in April of 1988, police searched Bredella's house. Oh, dang it. Found torture logs, pictures, and Pearson's partially decayed skull.
In December of 1988, Bredella pled guilty to first-degree murder of Robert Sheldon and 4 counts of second-degree murder.
He was then sent to the state penitentiary in Jefferson City, Missouri.
Bredella ends up announcing that he'd set up a trust fund for $50,000 for the families of his victims.
In January of 1989, Bredella gives an interview with local television channel in which he blames police and media for distorting him and his crimes.
When police told the story of Bredella's crimes, though, he had photographs and detailed scripts of everything that had happened. When they searched his house, he had 334 Polaroid images and 34 snapshot prints of the men he tortured and killed. In October of 1992, Bredella dies in prison from a heart attack. And that's kind of the end of the Robert Bredella case.
Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.